Greetings and welcome to A Contemplative Reader, where together we will explore the spiritual, the mystical, the mysterious, and the otherworldly in various forms of literature. Today we will be exploring the book Discovery by JAJ Minton, and JAJ stands for John, Amy, and Jacob Minton. This is a story unlike any other story that I think I've ever read. So, again, I have lots of notes on my legal pad from my days as a lawyer. Let's go. Just a few words of introduction. This book incorporates elements of the Cthulhu mythos from H.P. Lovecraft, with this gigantic cosmic creature being discovered in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean in a state of hibernation. That throws the entire world into a state of chaos. This story is set in the early 1990s. But with that overarching story, you can mix in snappy dialogue, laugh out loud humor, also elements, of course, of Lovecraftian cosmic horror, and also science fiction with the development of these AI persons, which are known in the story as Arlifs. And if that isn't enough, religion and spirituality play a surprisingly large role in this story. So that's what I'm going to explore now in more detail. Couple of additional brief introductory words. There will be minor spoilers in this story. I'm not going to go into the ultimate plot points or plot details of this story, but I'll be quoting a few lines from the book and talking about some of the overarching themes and details of the story. So if that's not something you want to know before reading the book, be forewarned of that. Also, I don't purport to be objective here. I don't know the Minton family personally, but I'm certainly connected with them on their BookTube channel, Talking Story. First thing I want to cover is how the title of this book tells the story. Discovery, of course, is referring to the discovery of this creature they call the Sleeping One in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Then it's also referred to as being an apocalypse in 5 acts. And what I want to point out here from a spiritual perspective, a biblical perspective, is they get the biblical meaning of the word apocalypse right. In popular culture, apocalypse oftentimes is referring to something like an end-of-the-world type catastrophe. But in Scripture, what apocalypse means from the Greek word that apocalypse is based on is something like a revealing, an unveiling, a pulling back of the curtain to see what is really going on in the cosmos. In the Bible, you can find various examples of apocalyptic literature, most notably in books such as Daniel, Ezekiel, and Revelation at the end of the New Testament, which is also referred to as the Apocalypse of John. In this book, it's an apocalypse, as it says, in 5 different acts. So there is a progressive unveiling, a revealing of what's going on in the cosmos through a steady stream of revelations spread throughout this entire book. It's also referred to on the title as Strange Eons, Book 1. This is a planned 5-book series, and of course this is book 1 of that. And the word eons here is critical because it gives you the sense that this story isn't just about what is happening in a few years around the earth in human time, but throughout eons, entire ages of history of the whole universe. In fact, there's a particular line in the book which gives you the sense of the kind of cosmic history in this story when one character says that these stories you learned are echoes from much older stories. When I came across that line in the book, I got goosebumps, actually, because that just kind of encapsulates that kind of progressive revealing of the deeper meaning of what's going on in the cosmos through this apocalypse. Second thing I want to cover in this video is the immense religious and mythological world building that's going on in this book. In only about a 450-page book, the authors do an incredible amount of religious and mythological world building, which I found all of which to be incredibly fascinating. As I mentioned, they just don't dump a lot of information in just a few paragraphs or a few chapters. they spread this out throughout the whole book with what is going on with the story of this gigantic creature living in the ocean and all of the cosmic world building that goes behind that particular story. And they just slowly spread the details throughout the book, so you're not engulfed with all of this at once, but you slowly see what is going on behind the curtain here with this particular creature and the cosmos itself. What I also want to point out is how this is done in a variety of different ways, many of which are very entertaining. Sometimes it's told through perspectives of characters through their diaries. Sometimes it's told through news stories. And there's one particular chapter that I just thought was amazing. There's a character who's a young girl from Africa who's kind of being raised within this cult-like religion, and part of that is indoctrinating her in the beliefs of this particular religion, part of which connects to the cosmic world building going on here. And she wrote a school report. It was just 2 or 3 pages, but in that school report, a lot of the backstory, a lot of this mythological world building is set forth in this young girl's school report story. I just thought that that was an incredibly ingenious and inventive way of doing some world building here about some very big picture stuff that wasn't put in a lengthy exposition from a character or some sort of an info dump. So I just love that particular chapter. Also, in the world building, it's not just from one character or one point of view, but it's from multiple points of view from people from around the globe, people from Africa and South America and Ireland and North America. Lots of places involved in this particular story. Also, it's not like a fantasy world where the author gets to develop religions and myths from scratch, essentially, but the authors of this story had to integrate this religious and mythological world building within an existing world. Again, this story is set in the early years of the 1990s, which is a world that I'm very familiar with. That's when I was in college and law school, and then went on to get married and started to have a family. So I remember the 1990s very well. And what they do is they put all of the details in this religious and mythological world building within that context, and they do it quite effectively. You also find references to real events in human history and how this religious and mythological world building integrates with that through stories connected to slavery and colonialism, stories of the spread of particular religious beliefs, and world events such as World War II. In fact, there's a character in the book who is an aging Nazi who's actually kind of funny, who escaped to South America after the war. What I also want to talk about is how the authors of this story draw from a wide variety of religious influences and talks about them at various points of the story. One, which is not specifically named, is Gnosticism. Gnosticism involves one of the tenets of general Gnostic belief is that there's an idea of this eternal battle between cosmic beings of good and evil. And that's one of the things going on here. Also, connections to Norse mythology here. There's a character revealed in the stories very much like Loki, the trickster god. Of course, there are references also to major world religions such as Islam and Hinduism and Christianity. And the Catholic Church plays a major role in this story. And all of these religions are described, at least in a few sentences or paragraphs, as how they are responding to this major world event of the discovery of the sleeping one in the Pacific Ocean. One of the main characters in the story actually also is a woman named Sister Mary, who is an Irish nun, no longer actually officially connected with the church, but still wears a religious habit and is involved in many of the major events of the story. And she's quite an enjoyable character to read about, and really an effective description of a religious sister, although again, no longer active in her religious sisterhood in the Catholic Church. One nitpick, not a criticism, again, this is a fictitious story. The authors could take the events in whatever direction they wanted to, and they certainly did that and had the liberty to do so. One thing, though, in the depiction of how the Catholic Church responded to the discovery of the sleeping one and the ensuing crisis that occurred around the world as a result. The story depicts how the Vatican was approached for a comment, and at the end of the day, the Vatican spokesman said, "No comment." If you go to the history of the last 30 to 40 years, there is a Vatican observatory, which is run by priests, all who aren't just normal priests. These are priests with PhDs in fields such as astrophysics. And the last three directors of the Vatican Observatory, going back again to the 80s and 1990s, when Pope John Paul II was the Holy Father, and then the directors of the observatory under Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis, they've all been asked questions about what would happen to the Church's beliefs if there was the discovery of extraterrestrial life. And they're all on record as to what their answers are and how that type of discovery would be integrated into the faith of the Church. So just a little bit of a nitpick there. I think the Catholic Church probably could have done better than a no comment on it, because that actually does play a part of the story. There's a crisis of faith which ensues, and kind of an interesting resurrection of the Aztec faith in Mexico as a result of the loss of faith of some people. But at any rate, a minor point. Again, they were entitled to take the direction and the story that they wanted to on that point. Where the world building really does excel, though, is the creation of entirely new religions within this book. For example, there's the Providence Group, which is this cult-like organization which has actually existed for quite some time, and they have believed in the existence of aliens among us. And so with the discovery of the sleeping one, this gigantic alien in the Pacific Ocean, there was actually a surge of popularity of this religion as a result. There's also the Apostles of the Singularity, this fringe group which developed from a religious following of the AI persons being developed in the world that created the story known as Arlifs. And then third, you've got the AI persons themselves. The Arlifs are described as having created their own kind of pagan type religion within their computer world. So I think the authors just did a magnificent job of creating these new religions in just a 400-page book. All in all, an impressive feat of religious and mythological world building, and only book one of this series. Finally, I want to cover just a couple of the religious and spiritual themes that I notice in this book. There's probably many, but just a couple that I want to talk about for a few minutes. First, some characters are described in this book as having great difficulty comprehending what has been revealed in this apocalypse. Our limited human brains can only understand so much about what is really going on in the cosmos. For example, here are a couple quotes from characters. "God is a merciful God. Our minds were not meant to hold the mysteries. It is a mercy to us that we cannot understand the universe and all it holds." The story actually, some of the characters in the story actually reference the Tower of Babel, which is mentioned by where humans tried to get all the way up to heaven by building this massive tower there in the first few chapters of Genesis. In other words, bad things happen when you try and get too close to the eternal. I'm also reminded of the story from the book of Genesis of the Garden of Eden. Humans were not meant to partake of the fruits of all knowledge. Our brains just weren't meant to handle that kind of cosmic eternal knowledge. And again, bad things can happen as a result. But, second theme I want to talk about. What if through some sort of connection to these cosmic beings and mysteries occurs? What happens then? Can that gap be closed by some people who have been given the ability to see what is going on behind the curtain, to see and begin to understand, comprehend what's going on behind the veil with what has been revealed? By extension, can humanity as a whole be given the ability to survive and even live despite what has been revealed? That's a theme that I think will continue to be explored, hopefully, throughout the rest of the books of this series, and I'm excited to continue to reading them. So this book is highly recommended to anybody who's a fan of science fiction, cosmic horror, or just wants a good entertaining read with lots of excitement, lots of great world building mixed with some humor as well. So thank you for watching. Peace be with you.